Freedom, the highest value of the Arya Mithra path. Article 1 of Book 0. The Arya Mithra path does not ask you to believe, it asks you to experience. It does not come to the seeker and say, accept this story, obey this law, kneel before this God, repeat this doctrine, and call it truth. It says something far more dangerous. Walk, see for yourself, know through your own being. Truth must come to you through your own door. Many religions and ideologies begin by handing the human being a box. They give a pre-written history. They give a fixed cosmology. They give a law. They give a list of what is allowed and what is forbidden. They tell you where you came from, where you are going, what you must believe, what you must fear, and before whom you must become small. They give you a story before you have begun your own quest. But the Arya Mithra path does not begin with a box. It begins with a flame. A flame is not a doctrine. A flame is not a prison. A flame is not a commandment. A flame is an invitation. It says, walk. It says, discover. It says, do not betray your own capacity to know. The Arya Mithra path is not a religion of obedience. It is a mystic path of direct experience. It does not ask for blind followers. It does not ask for sheep. It calls forth lions. But the lion here is not a symbol of domination. It is a symbol of dignity, courage, sovereignty, and inner fire. To become a lion is not to rule over others. It is to stop betraying the truth of your own soul. It is to become yourself, free, courageous, and alive from within. And this is why the highest value of the Arya Mithra path is freedom. Human beings are born free, not merely in the political sense, not only because no visible chain has been placed around the body, not only because the body can move, the mouth can speak, or the world appears to grant permission. Human beings are born free in a deeper way. They are born as living possibility. Before the world gives us a name, a nationality, a religion, a duty, a fear, a wound, a shame, or a mask, something pure is already alive within us. There is a flame before identity. There is a presence before the story begins. A child does not enter the world as an ideology. A child does not arrive as a servant of inherited beliefs. A child is not born guilty, fallen, or small. A child arrives as mystery. Then the world begins its work. Family gives us a role. Society gives us expectations. Religions give us cosmologies. Ideologies give us explanations. Nations give us stories. Cultures give us shame. Trauma gives us fear. Survival gives us masks. Slowly, layer by layer, the original presence of the human being becomes covered. We begin to confuse the mask with the face. We begin to say, this is who I am. But often, what we call I is only a collection of things we were taught to become. A name given by others. A belief inherited before we could question. A nationality tied to history and blood. A persona shaped by survival. A wound mistaken for destiny. A religion or ideology that gave us a pre-made story before we had the courage to discover our own. And somewhere beneath all of this, the true self waits. The Arya Mithra path begins with freedom because without freedom, nothing truly begins. Self-discovery begins with freedom. Self-actualization begins with freedom. Direct experience begins with freedom. The courage to enter the unknown begins with freedom. The journey toward higher consciousness begins with freedom. A person ruled by fear is not free. Even if no one is physically holding them prisoner, fear can become a chain around the soul. Fear decides what they say, what they hide, what they dare to ask, and how small they must become in order to survive. A person trapped inside a doctrine is not free either. When a system gives you the whole story before you have lived, searched, questioned, or experienced, something in your own capacity is being disrespected. It tells you, do not discover, do not see with your own eyes, do not walk into the mystery. The answers have already been given to you. This is one of the deepest differences between belief and knowing. Belief can be inherited. Knowing must be lived. Belief can be repeated. Knowing must pass through your own being. Belief can belong to the crowd. Knowing is born in direct experience. The Arya Mithra path rejects blind belief. It asks for gnosis, direct knowing, not secondhand truth, not inherited truth, not borrowed eyes, not someone else's door. No priest, teacher, ideology, institution, inherited belief, or spiritual authority can replace the experience that must pass through your own soul. You are responsible to know who you are. You are responsible to discover why you are here. You are responsible to shape the direction of your own becoming. This responsibility is not blame, it is dignity. It is the dignity of the human being who refuses to remain small before inherited fear. The Arya Mithra path does not reject myth. Myths are powerful. Symbols are powerful. Ancient stories are powerful. The soul does not speak only through concepts. The soul speaks through stars, rivers, animals, dreams, sacred drinks, caves, birds, music, fire, and silence. But a dead myth becomes a chain. A living myth becomes a map. Religions and ideologies can turn stories into cages, but living myth opens the gate and says, walk, discover, see for yourself. The Arya Mithra path does not force the seeker to live inside one mythic box. It invites the seeker into the living mystery. Truth comes through your own door. The truth that comes to one person may not come in the same form to another. Each human being has different wounds, different memories, different perceptions, different capacities, different fears, and different inner openings. The journey is not a road already drawn for everyone. It is a living quest, revealed through direct experience. Direct experience is sacred because it belongs to the one who lives it, and it cannot be handed down as doctrine. What comes to you through direct knowing belongs first to your own soul. It does not need to become a law for everyone else. It does not need to become a new chain painted in sacred colors. Book 0 of the Arya Mithra path begins as an introduction before the 7 flames. It is the threshold. It is the overview before the entrance. The Arya Mithra path unfolds through 7 stages, 7 flames, 7 gates of becoming. Later, the seeker will meet the flames of separation and flight, union and friendship, courage and struggle, wisdom and leadership, shadow and dream, solar awakening and liberation. In the first flame of the Arya Mithra path, Padi Dan, learning to fly, this freedom becomes a deeper initiation. In that stage, the seeker begins to release the past, drop false identities, and free themselves from the fears and masks that shape them. But even before that first gate opens, the seeker must understand why freedom comes first. Before any of these gates can truly open, one thing must be understood. The path is not here to make you a follower. It is not here to give you a finished identity. It is here to awaken you and give you the courage to liberate yourself. Freedom is not chaos. Freedom is not irresponsibility. Freedom is not childish rejection of everything. Freedom is conscious self-liberation. It is the courage to stand before the inherited world and say, "This I choose. This I release. This I honor. This no longer belongs to me." But freedom is not only freedom from, it is also freedom for. Freedom from fear, freedom from false identity, freedom from inherited shame, freedom from blind obedience, freedom from the mask that was mistaken for the self. But also freedom for truth, freedom for love, freedom for creativity, freedom for consciousness, freedom for evolution, freedom for becoming. A person who is only free from something may remain empty, angry, or lost. They may break chains but not know how to live. The Arya Mithra path is not only about escaping the cage, it is about discovering what the flame is for. Freedom is for the flowering of the human being. Freedom is for the birth of the true self. Freedom is for the courage to love without possession, to create without fear, to seek truth without obedience, and to respond to existence with consciousness instead of reacting from wounds. This is the deeper meaning of responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, not obedience. Responsibility. The ability to respond consciously to life. The free human being does not simply react against the past. The free human being becomes awake enough to answer existence from a deeper place. This is the rebellion of the Arya Mithra seeker. Not destruction, not hatred, not violence, not blindness. It is the rebellion of the soul against false identity. It is the rebellion of the lion against the cage. A person who does not know themselves can be controlled easily. They can be moved by fear, shame, guilt, approval, inherited loyalty, or the need to belong. They can be told who they are, what to believe, whom to obey, and what is forbidden to ask. But a person who knows themselves becomes difficult to enslave, not because they are arrogant, not because they want power over others, but because they have returned to their own center. This is why every controlling system fears the awakened human being. The obedient human being repeats. The awakened human being questions. The obedient human being waits for permission. The awakened human being walks, explores, and discovers. This is why freedom must come first. Without freedom, love becomes attachment. Without freedom, joy becomes performance. Without freedom, wisdom becomes doctrine. Without freedom, ritual becomes empty repetition. Without freedom, spirituality becomes another prison. The first freedom is freedom from false identity. Freedom from the name that was mistaken for the self. Freedom from the role that was mistaken for destiny. Freedom from the religion that was mistaken for truth. Freedom from the ideology that was mistaken for reality. Freedom from the fear that was mistaken for wisdom. Freedom from the wound that was mistaken for identity. Freedom from the story that was mistaken for the soul. You are not your name. You are not your nationality. You are not your religion. You are not your wound. You are not the mask you wore to survive. You are not a destiny written before you became conscious. You are not a script written by stars, blood, history, family, society, or fear. The persona is not the soul. The mask may help us survive, but it cannot lead us to truth. At some point in the journey, the seeker must turn inward and ask, what am I still carrying that was never truly mine? This is where self-discovery begins, not as a beautiful idea, but as real inner work. The seeker begins to see the inherited beliefs, the fears learned from parents, the shame carried from culture and religion, the wounds repeated through relationships, and the shadow hidden beneath the acceptable face. Freedom requires shadow work. Because we are not only imprisoned by society, we are also imprisoned by the parts of ourselves we refuse to see. The shadow is not evil. The shadow is the unseen, the rejected, the buried, the exiled part of the self. To become free, the seeker must not only remove outer chains, but also meet the inner places where fear still rules. This is the beginning of becoming whole. The Arya Mithra path does not seek a half-human being who performs light and rejects darkness. It calls for the integral human, the whole human, the one who can face the hidden self, integrate the shadow, and stand with both roots and wings. Rooted in the earth, the seeker grows toward the stars. Freedom does not mean disconnection. A human being is not a lonely particle floating in emptiness. We belong to nature. We receive life from nature. We breathe the air of this earth, drink its waters, eat from its body, and move under the sun, the moon, the seasons, the solstices, the equinoxes, and the turning wheel of existence. The human being is part of nature, part of existence, part of the living flow of creation. The free human being learns to align with earth and sky, body and cosmos, instinct and consciousness. In this alignment, the human being becomes a bridge, rooted below, open above. Not escaping the world, not being swallowed by the world, but participating in the flow of creation. This is why the Arya Mithra path does not reject this world as a mistake, a prison, or a place to be hated. It does not say, abandon life and return to the source. It says, remember the source and live this world joyfully. Go to the source, but do not despise the earth. Touch higher consciousness, but do not reject the body.
Enter the ocean of consciousness, but return with more love, more courage, more joy, and more presence. This world is not to be rejected. It is to be experienced consciously. The body is not an enemy. The body is the temple. Arya Mithra does not need an outer temple to imprison the sacred in stone. It does not depend on a church, synagogue, mosque, or temple outside the human being. The living body is the first temple. The awakened body, aligned with existence, nature, and the flow of creation, becomes the place where the path is lived. The senses are not sins, they are doors.
Joy is not a distraction. It is a sacred rhythm of life. Joy is not the same as happiness. Happiness often depends on conditions. Joy is deeper. Joy is a current of life. Joy does not deny grief. Joy does not close its eyes to suffering. Sadness exists. Grief exists. Wounds exist. Darkness exists. But the Arya Mithra seeker does not build a permanent home inside grief. A heart trapped forever in sorrow becomes heavy. It loses its vibration, its fire, and its ability to rise. A joyful heart can reach higher states of consciousness more easily, because joy keeps the soul alive and in motion. Joy is also the art of living in the present. Much of human suffering comes from being caught in the mind's linear time: past, present, future. Memories of the past hook the heart. Anxiety about the future pulls the soul away from life. The mind lives in lines, but nature moves in cycles. Seasons return. The moon changes. The sun rises and sets. Life turns, dies, renews, and begins again. The seeker learns not to be trapped by past tragedy or future fear. To live joyfully is to be born in the moment, not because the past never happened, not because the future does not matter, but because life is only alive here. A joyful heart says, I am still alive. I can still see the flower. I can still feel the wind. I can still dance. I can still create. I can still love. I can still become. The Arya Mithra path is therefore not only a path of liberation from something, it is also a path of participation in something. Participation in life, participation in nature, participation in creation, participation in the evolution of consciousness. The human being is not finished. Each person carries capacities that remain asleep, ignored, or suppressed. Intuition, vision, courage, love, imagination, direct knowing, expanded perception, creative power. These are not fantasies. They are human potentials waiting to be cultivated. The path does not treat the human being as fallen. It treats the human being as unfinished, a divine possibility, a flame not yet fully awakened. Human beings are not born guilty. They are not born as criminals before existence. They are not here to live under the shadow of eternal punishment. They are here to experience, to make mistakes, to learn, to discover, and to become. A mistake is not the end of the soul. A mistake is part of the journey of consciousness. In the Arya Mithra path, the human being does not kneel in terror before higher power. The seeker becomes a friend of higher consciousness, the higher self, and higher forces. Not above them, not beneath them, but in relationship, in dignity, in covenant, in friendship. The seeker works shoulder to shoulder with higher powers. This is not arrogance, it is dignity. To walk the Arya Mithra path is to participate in your own becoming. You cannot say forever, I am helpless, I am weak, I am only what happened to me, I am only what the world made me. At some point, freedom asks for responsibility, the responsibility to awaken, the responsibility to grow, the responsibility to participate in the evolution of your own consciousness, the responsibility to respond to existence consciously, the responsibility to create instead of merely repeat, the responsibility to love instead of possess, the responsibility to seek truth instead of inheriting answers, the responsibility to become. This does not mean the path is easy. The unknown is not always comfortable. When there is no pre-written script, the seeker may feel lost. When old identities fall away, there may be emptiness. When fear no longer decides, the soul must learn how to walk. But this is the dignity of the human being, to discover, to create, to love, to respond, to become, to reach toward the highest hope of life. Perhaps we do not yet know what that highest hope is. Perhaps it is greater consciousness. Perhaps it is a more radiant human being. Perhaps it is a form of love we do not yet understand. Perhaps it is a divine possibility still sleeping inside the human soul. The Arya Mithra path does not force an answer, it opens the quest. It says, walk toward the highest hope, walk with courage, walk with joy, walk rooted in the earth and open to the stars. Before the seven flames, before the practices, before the rituals, before the symbolic maps, before the later gates of union, courage, wisdom, shadow, radiance, and liberation, there is this first threshold. Are you willing to stop being what the world named you? Are you willing to break the chains of fear? Are you willing to step outside the boxes of religion, ideology, and inherited identity? Are you willing to walk without a pre-written script? Are you willing to respect your own capacity to discover? Are you willing to become free not only from the cage, but for truth, love, creativity, consciousness, and becoming? This is the beginning of the Arya Mithra path, the first turning of the face toward the path. Before the entrance, the seeker must understand that the path is not here to replace one prison with another. It is here to awaken the flame. And the first flame before all flames is freedom. Freedom as responsibility. Freedom as courage. Freedom as self-discovery. Freedom as self-liberation. Freedom as direct experience. Freedom as conscious response to existence. Freedom as participation in the evolution of consciousness. Freedom as the return to the living center beneath the mask. The Arya Mithra seeker does not kneel before inherited fear. The seeker enters the quest, not as a believer waiting for permission, but as a living flame, a lion of consciousness, a human being who remembers, I am not my name, I am not my wound, I am not my nation, I am not my religion, I am not my past, I am not the mask I wore to survive, I am not a destiny written before my awakening. I am rooted in the earth, I am open to the stars, I am part of the living flow of creation. I am a flame of becoming, and the path begins when I dare to walk free.